Hello, and welcome everyone to episode 4 of Top 5 Albums. If you have not been paying attention, this is episode 4, and we're kind of doing this as we go, and hope you've been enjoying it so far. But one thing that we want to get out, which was one thing you mentioned last time, Pat, was our different ways of accessing us. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us. You can email us at top5albums@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Top 5 Albums, and you can even join us as friends if you want to be friends of the show on Facebook. And, it's a collaborative thing. We always like to hear everybody's opinion, and just hope you have enjoyed everything so far, and hopefully we've taken off at this point. And so, episode 4, we're going to do compilations today. So, Pat, what makes a good compilation for you?
That's a great question. Hi, everyone. So we were talking about compilation albums in general, and it's funny because when you touch on compilations, it's hard not to look at, say, greatest hits. So, and I think when we discuss these albums too, I think a lot of people might, and we certainly debated this, certain albums that we either included or thought about, which could be considered greatest hits in a lot of ways. But typically, when I think of like a greatest hits album, I think of perhaps maybe a collection of singles, but also a collection of singles that come from albums. When we were kind of putting together compilations, we were thinking of more along the lines of songs that you could not find, especially, I don't know, on previous albums, what have you, and stuff. And so that's kind of like what we were coming up with here. And we have what we feel is a pretty, I don't know if we want to call it an eclectic mix, but certainly stuff that, we like a lot, obviously, but we know you want to check out as well. So
yeah, we hope you're ready for a lot of now. This is what I call music volumes 5, 6, and 7. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
That's a lot of that coming out on this one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
No, but actually, I like to think of it as I've been watching a lot of that British baking show that's on Netflix, where it's I compare it as to a pie. You want to have it good, nice, and then you want some deep cuts in there. You want to hear some stuff that you might not normally hear. A good compile of some things.
Good way to put it.
The first one that I'm starting off with is going to be Patsy Cline's. Actually, it's her greatest hits, and for me, this one was actually one that when I first started collecting records. It was kind of a cheap one that I bought, and I've always kind of liked her voice. And once I started doing some research on this, it was kind of really interesting to hear. Her. I'm not like a Simon Cowell. I don't know, a good voice from when I hear one, but I think with certain artists like Patsy Cline, Janis Joplin, or Aretha Franklin, you could tell just right off the bat that these people were born to sing. And I think Patsy Cline, in this, you get a lot of that. So this one actually came out in 1967. Doing some research on this, Patsy Cline only lived to be 30. Right. So this actually came out after she died. But a lot of these songs were actually written by other people, specifically Hank Cochran, which he had no relation to Eddie Cochran in. Just happened to have the same name. But he did songs on there that are I Fall to Pieces, She's Got You, and Why Can't He Be You, and You're Stronger Than Me. Those songs are really good. It's really interesting because he writes them through a female perspective, and they're these kind of really sad, just breakup songs, and to hear them from her, I think specifically are really good. The one thing that when I was doing the research on was the song "Crazy," which she's most famous for, was actually a Willie Nelson song. And the interesting thing that I found out about it was that Willie Nelson was actually hanging out with Patsy Cline's husband at a bar, and he happened to put his version of the song on at the bar. And then when Patsy Cline's husband heard it, he was like, "Hey, Patsy's gonna cover that song." And Willie Nelson, I guess, he actually told the story on his radio show or something like that. And he said he could just kind of laughed it off, and then a week later she started to record it, and because she couldn't actually get through the session of it because she actually had a severe car crash. So she had the severe car crash. She tried to record it. She didn't get through the full session, and then it's because she actually had a broken rib, so she couldn't hit the high notes on it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so after a week went by, the rib healed up. She actually just knocked it out in one session, So it's pretty amazing to hear that. Um, but yeah, learning about her and her life is like just really interesting. That she actually uh, started out playing on a lot of Western TV shows, and if you've never seen those like Western TV shows, they were like Gene Autry had one.
Right.
It's kind of like really old black and white TV shows where they would have a lot of performers that were into country and country Western music sort of come out and play on these shows, and you can actually see it on TV, and is kid friendly. A lot of puppets and stuff like that, but she played on these sort of shows, and then she actually hit her stride when she actually played the Grand Ole Opry. But the song that uh, Hank Cochran wrote was "She's Got You," which has actually been covered by other people like Cat Power, Loretta Lynn, and Ellis Costello. So those were all just really good, solid songs. If you get a chance to pick this one up, please do so. It's definitely one to have in your collection, and I suggest just give it a spin. You'll enjoy it for sure.
Well, I definitely want to piggyback on that. It's funny you mentioned Loretta Lynn covered that song, and the first time I ever heard of Patsy Cline was actually in England, and so when I was younger. And again, this will sort of reveal my age, so to speak. So this is fine. So this is probably like in about 1982, and I was a kid, and me, my parents, and my sister went to Europe. Travel all around and that kind of thing. So, but I remember being in a hotel in England, and they would show cable, and cable back then, if you're old enough to remember this, when they would have like a movie, so to speak, like a channel. I don't know if it was HBO or what. I kind of, to be honest with you, I was a kid, but they would show movies over and over again. And I remember being in that hotel, and there was a point where me and my sister were kind of just, kicking it, watching stuff, so my parents probably could go have adult fun or whatever. And because we were there for a few days, but I remember Coal Miner's Daughter being on. That's a movie with Sissy Spacek playing Loretta Lynn. And so I remember watching that, and it really sunk in. This is probably like 1982, I would think. 1981, 82. I think the movie itself came out in 1980, something like that. So, but regardless, you kind of hear a little bit about Patsy Cline, but of course the movie's about Loretta Lynn. So you think, okay, that's great. But you think, wow, what an interesting thing. And of course she dies and everything like that. So that's when I first heard of her, but I can remember first hearing Patsy Cline. I couldn't remember like the exact moment.
Yeah.
But just thinking, oh my God, what a beautiful voice.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like you said, I really got to piggyback off of what you said there about how when you hear like Janis Joplin or you hear Aretha Franklin, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Patsy Cline is someone that obviously you cannot think of her without thinking of country music. She is someone that if she was, say, born in England, or if she was born, say, in like Africa or in Asia, something like that. I mean, she you're right, just natural born singer, and it's interesting to think that her voice would, certainly dovetail with any kind of genre. Music, right? Yeah. Because she just has that natural talent, and the way when she sings too, the way she makes you feel, it's incredible.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's one. It's always just good to put on if you're just kind of tired of just standard listening to whatever you normally listen to, and you just want to listen to somebody just sing really well. Put that album on. It's really good. But that was my first pick, and then so you're next for your next pick.
Yeah, excellent. And so thank you, and this is going to be
number what was it? I did 5, so this is what, 4.
Sure.
Yeah,
but,
number 4
but
on
again,
the list.
But as always, we're not rating these in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So, again, don't take this with a grain of salt. We just happen to pick these.
And I think this is one of those like where obviously we want to be. We'd like to think of ourselves as being diverse. So if it seems like we're going from say, Patsy Cline to something completely different, well, it kind of is in a sense, but still, it's Substance, which was a compilation from the band Joy Division. Whom I adore immensely, and I'm sure many of you do as well. Joy Division, of course, Ian Curtis very famously, took his own life, and from that, the remaining band members, of course, formed New Order.
Oh yeah.
But the amount of work I think that Joy Division did, obviously 2 albums proper, and then of course they did a lot of other things too, which initially they were actually called Warsaw. That was their band's first name.
Yeah.
and the the first cut off of Substance, which is their first single.
Yeah.
And then of course you go through the entire compilation itself. There's singles on there, like I think one of the most famous, of course, being Love Will Tear Us Apart, and along with that, of course, there's Dead Souls, which I know Nine Inch Nails famously covered for a movie. I want to say maybe it was The Crow. I don't know. I never saw that movie. So,
oh, really? Yeah.
Something like that. But the Nine Inch Nails
that
cover
was
is pretty spot on.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And then of course, there's so many songs on there, like Transmission. For my money, I think my favorite, not that this matters or at all, but my favorite Joy Division song, No Love Lost, which is it's not on anything else. It's on Substance, and then of course Failures right after that. To me, when I hear that compilation, like that's to me is almost a great definition of compilation, in the sense that you have these rarities, and as you mentioned, I think so well at the beginning of this podcast, that it's songs you kind of know, and then deeper cuts, deeper tracks are rarities as far as like what can sort of be put together. And you think about how Substance really does a good job, I think, of sort of in a sense illustrating for you sonically exactly what Joy Division was all about. And of course, when you think of Joy Division, you can't help but think of Martin Hannett's production style. But although that's specific on certain tunes, you actually get a wider range of like how they actually sound, because there was a grittier sound to Joy Division that was separate from the Martin Hannett production style, I think. And so, and even She's Lost Control, it's a different version of that from the album from Closer. So anyways, for my money, it's really good. But
and it's definitely one that's out, different from Patsy Cline, and
right, yeah,
but we're just trying to widen the range of again, this ongoing list of however you want to categorize it. And one that I happen to pick here is one that came out in 2013, and it's Who is William Onyeabor? So this one was actually when I was actually kind of thinking about this the other night. You hear maybe friends that might tell you, "Oh, you got to check out this band. They're really different, or they're really weird." And occasionally they might be different, they might be weird. But it sounds like a generic punk rock band or a generic whatever band. For William Onyabor, I would say he's different in a way where when somebody puts on Captain Beefheart for the first time, or plays Para Ubu for you or something, where it's very different, especially for the time it came out. So I actually heard about this through a friend, and I happened to see the album cover a lot. I think Pitchfork was really pushing it at the time, but it's a weird album cover where he looks like kind of like a Gary Coleman with a cowboy hat on. But I take it at face value. When you actually listen to it, it's wonderful. It's a lot of heavy synthesizers, Moogs, drum machines, very hypnotic rhythms. If you're really into Kraftwerk, I would say definitely check this one out. It's really interesting because he's from Nigeria, and Vice did a little documentary on them putting together this compilation. And why this compilation is kind of important was he had his own record pressing and record recording studio in Nigeria, and a lot of people didn't know much about him. When you start to watch the documentary, they didn't know how he got all these synthesizers and Moogs there, especially at the time. It was like from 1980 to 1985, and a lot of people thought he was getting money from Russia because he went out to go make films in Russia, and then another person heard that he was actually a professor at Oxford University. So anytime they tried to track him down in this little like half-hour documentary, he's this very sort of mysterious person, and they kind of go down to this rabbit hole of trying to find this music. The reason why they started to do this was because they were making the record label Luke Bop were making a compilation about 1970s Nigerian music, and it's just they stumbled upon him, and then once they started to find out more about this guy, the more they got kind of really interested and started to hear his music. And I'll put a link up for the documentary if you feel free to watch it. It's definitely one worth watching, and his music's definitely worth listening to too. It's very just sort of dancey. it's weird because in the documentary he seems like a very standoff guy. They always talk about him as being a bully, but if you listen to his lyrics, they're about like, not going to war, having friends, stuff like that. It's just very strange, and he kind of became like a born again Christian, and at 1985 he just stopped doing music, and he never wanted to kind of talk to anybody again unless it was about Jesus. And they have this sort of part where they actually call him, and he doesn't want to talk to them because they're trying to track him down for this compilation that they made. And they actually go to see him, and he agreed to speak with them, and then they start to film him, and he just doesn't say a thing, and he just says, you can film this, but that's it. And it was just basically this sort of like panning shot of all his equipment. So it's definitely interesting, fun to check out. Unfortunately, he died in 2017, and they kind of did this tribute to him on the radio when I was driving home late one time. I heard it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And if you get a chance to check it out, definitely do so. It's definitely out there. And if you want to put something on where your friends are like, who is this? I would say put this on. And, you can impress a lot of people by putting this on, and they'll definitely like it for sure. But that was my pick for number 3. And then what do we have for number 2 here, Pat?
Yeah, excellent. And I'm definitely looking forward to, I think, hearing more of William Onyabor.
Mm-hmm.
It's very intriguing. So for my next pick, I actually went a little bit further back, a little further back than Joy Division, but is actually ahead of, or actually after than Patsy Cline, but it would be in about 1972, which is when Lenny Kaye, the guitar player for, Patti Smith, very excellent musician into his own right, but he actually put together a compilation called Nuggets, which I remember when I first heard this too. It just it seems so, I don't know. It's weird. It's so familiar, but yet so fresh in a way when you first hear it. It's a compilation of garage bands from all over America, really, and it's kind of funny too because I saw this documentary. Don Letts had put out a documentary about punk rock, and Legs McNeil, who wrote Please Kill Me, the oral history of punk rock.
Oh yeah,
and he also did Punk Magazine. He had alluded to the fact that when he first heard the term punk, besides it being a term from prison, someone that would be in there that would basically be someone that would be like
a punk,
someone's punk, or do with that what you will. But at the same time, it was actually referred to by a critic that referred to the Nuggets compilation. It's almost like these were bands that, hey, they weren't the Rolling Stones, they weren't the Kinks, they weren't, the Who or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
These were bands that were just trying to do it, trying to, play rock and roll. And it's a bit of a double album. And there's a lot of great artists on here, a lot of great songs that you may be familiar with. You've definitely heard them somewhere here and there. Something just going through, like the track listing here, I can see the Standells' Dirty Water. If you are a baseball fan, you might recall the Red Sox when they won their first World Series since, Babe Ruth, however many years, 80-something years, I think.
Like 28 or something.
They're actually from Boston, the Standells, and so Dirty Water was actually like the song that you'd always hear at the end of every victory during that playoffs.
Oh, that's funny.
And then along with that, say like the Blues Project, that was Al Cooper's first band. Al Cooper, the organist or keyboardist, however you want to put it, for Bob Dylan. Obviously played on Highway 61 Revisited.
Yeah.
The Seeds, Pushing Too Hard. Just looking at all these great songs. The 13th Floor Elevators, You're Gonna Miss Me. Whoever would have thought a jug would be a viable.
I know, yeah.
But Roky Erickson, of course, just an absolute. He's just amazing. But that's where I first heard them, and actually, for my money, one of the best. It's just, to me, it's one of the best maybe rock songs. I love the Count 5 Psychotic Reaction. The Cramps do an incredible cover of it as well. It's kind of a live cover off of a compilation of theirs that I have. But regardless, the Count 5 Psychotic Reaction. You got the Amboy Dukes on here, which was actually Ted Nugent's very first band, them being from Michigan. Again, remember these bands are from all over. And the Amboy Dukes, this is, I think, when, I don't know, maybe it was prior to Ted Nugent turning into a Republican douchebag.
like way prior. And
but although he probably was still.
Yeah, but like I've never listened to his old stuff, like
Right.
Cat Scratch Fever, but I know that.
He was an incredible guitar player.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
You hear it on this as well. And then along with that, another band that comes is the Nas, which was Todd Rundgren's first band. The song "Open My Eyes," one of the highlights of this compilation as well. Todd Rundgren, of course, producing the New York Dolls' first album, and I think he produced that Frankenstein song from Edgar Winter. So
his solo album too is amazing.
So it is kind of funny to me. Todd Rundgren, amazing. He's kind of like the guy that you can find him in the sort of, I don't know, that's that sort of punk circle, but then also he was part of the overblown 70s, excess, I think, as well. Well, I mean, regardless, but it's a great song on here because remember, these are garage bands. These are kind of when these bands were first starting out, and so you can sense the love of rock and roll. I think when you listen to this entire compilation, it's just it holds up for me. It's just these are some bands that perhaps we're not even really heard from.
They've done many of these, right?
Oh, say again?
They've done many of these over the years.
Oh,
right?
Thank you. That's a good point because actually, Rhino Records they released a box set, which I think was about four. I want to say four of the nuggets. They call it artifacts. The psychedelic era or whatever you want to call it and stuff. And then of course, there are many great songs after that. But I would say for sure, you've got to check out the very first one, which is just it's terrific.
Opens up a lot of doors for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and this one that actually made our number one, we'll get to in just a second, but a lot of these that didn't necessarily make it, that open up a lot of doors for a lot of people. I feel it was kind of, again, hard to narrow down like what was good, just like any show that we do. But for me going down the list, one that I had that is like a Tribe Called Quest anthology is really good. It's weird because when we started talking about this, we felt like there's a lot of punk greatest hits out there. Maybe we'll say that for another episode, for another day. But the Cramps, what's the one that you have? Because I have Bad News for Bad People, which is excellent. It's 10 tracks, just like a perfect Cramps compilation. What's the one that you have?
The one that I have is it's kind of funny because if you look at it, like say like on like Wikipedia, everybody's friend. It's not even on there. It's sort of an odd compilation that I actually got at an old CD store.
Oh,
it's funny because it has songs on there like Can Your Pussy Do the Dog? What's Inside a Girl? Things like that. But at the same time, it's not like a proper. It's kind of weird. It's almost like is it like a promo disc or something like that? But the 10th song on there, regardless, is the Cramps cover of Psychotic Reaction, and it's just terrific. It's a live cover,
and Black Flag's First 4 Years for You.
Absolutely. That almost made my cut. I got to say that to me, when I hear Nervous Breakdown, which isn't on any real album, but on the first song, I mean, to me, that's Black Flag. That's LA pop.
I think that's a lot of people's go-to song when they think of them. For me, everything went black, where it goes chronologically by singer, and then it has all the radio promos at the end. It's really funny because they mention like.
Oh right, that's true,
K-Rock back in the day, and it's like our local. It's like
Oh,
I'm having a nervous breakdown. I got to go see Black Flag at the. It's just like these kind of funny voices,
and I think you're right. Everything went black. Also, it does have Keith Morris, Ron Reyes, Chavo. What's his name? Des Cadena.
And it ends with like Henry Rollins.
Nice.
And then so Elvis's Sun Records, which was one that you mentioned.
The compilation.
The compilation. Stax Records.
Absolutely, that's soul music. That's like a 7-album compilation.
It almost goes into like box set ish sort of. Which again, maybe we'll save like a box set episode for a different day. And then Rolling Stones, Hot Rocks, which is really famous.
I think so. Yeah, Hot Rocks is funny because it pulls a lot of songs from albums, but it also has a lot of singles. Because remember that was prior to when they started in 64, I think 63, 64. There was a lot of singles that weren't really on albums proper, but along with Hot Rocks too, the big hits High Tide and Green Grass. That was kind of, I think, maybe one of the first compilations where you kind of got say singles. I think overall, and by the way, I think another one that we didn't really talk about was in a lot of ways the Smiths, Louder Than Bombs.
Louder Than Bombs is
great,
I love that album.
I could listen to that. At any time, it's just a great album.
So. But unfortunately, those didn't make the list.
Nope.
But we do have a number one.
We do.
And do you want to introduce our number one?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. So for for both of us, as you can tell from those that we mentioned before and the ones we've already talked about, it's interesting trying to find one that you can both agree upon that you feel is really really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And for both of us, we felt very strongly about the Buzzcocks singles going steady.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of is it a greatest hits, because really these were all singles. And this is of course punk rock late 70s, early 80s, well really late 70s I think here with singles going steady. And I mean just top up and down. I mean it's like going through just a top single one after the other. I mean, just from the very opening track, Orgasmatic, to the very end, it's just everything is just terrific from start to finish.
Oh
and
yeah,
I know I can sit here and just talk about it. On it, but if you have not heard it,
I would say it's very interesting because it's like a punk band with a lot of melodic
love
tunes.
songs.
Yeah, and it's not just straight punk songs like I hate my mom, like that. And it's like when you hear the name Buzzcocks, like that, maybe it might sound standoffish and it might be sort of that. But this came out in 1979 on IRS Records,
right?
And it goes through chronologically. Like, What Do I Get? I love that song, and I was first exposed to it through that movie Ghost World. If you haven't seen that movie, there's a part where who's the girl who was it? I'm really bad with. I know
it's like
Charlize.
Scarlett Johansson's in there.
Yeah,
but that. Oh gosh.
Anyways, she's like dyeing her hair, and they just go into like, "What do I get?" And it's very memorable scene for me, and also and Why Can't I Touch It?
Oh wow,
that's a song that I've seen. Like I remember watching MTV as a kid, and they'd always have that hypnotic rhythm going through, where it's just like and the bass line, and it's just like. Oh yeah, that was the Buzzcocks. That's so strange. They'd never played them on MTV, but they'd always have these sort of like cuts of like promoting MTV, and it would be like you see shots of like Britney Spears or NSYNC, and it's like they're dancing to like this Buzzcock sound, and it's just like this is so strange, and like it was really popular. But
one thing that's so unusual about, for me at least, when I look at like say the Buzzcocks, and obviously this this being just a great example of just what a fine band they are. Whether you want to call them a fine punk band or fine rock and roll band, however you want to look at it. But it's interesting because a lot of those punk bands that came out of from England at least, like, from the late 70s, you think of like the Sex Pistols, you think of the Clash when they started, you think of the Damned, obviously all of them great. There's a certain strong, like when you think of rock and roll, that sort of, it's the bass guitar, drums, okay, and it's it's almost like sped up Chuck Berry riffs in a sense, and but that's fine. It's great. It works. It's bringing it right back down, stripping things down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of those bands, though, of course, they went on to do really creative things because these were obviously very creative people. You think about John Lydon going to Public Image.
Oh yeah,
and of course what the Clash did with their career, with obviously going to London Calling, that sort of thing, and then of course the Damned themselves. They when you listen to their later stuff, the Buzzcocks, to me, it's like this was the band that sort of stayed, I think, on that route of playing, like the sort of straight ahead rock and roll in a sense. But what's so incredible is that how incredible that rhythm section. Really, that drummer is just is terrific. But you think about how they grew. It didn't become stagnant, and as we mentioned, we think about singles going steady, sort of play on words, and a lot of their songs are love songs in a sense. And to think about it being a punk band playing these love songs, taking it back to what I was talking about earlier with Nuggets, this is just a band playing really great rock and roll music, not pretentious, not and there's humor in it. There's, to me, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and it's definitely one I feel like. It's just a fun listen to, and it's one of the ones that you could sit there and you can try to collect the singles, but why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just go out and get this and just have them all in one, back to back, perfect? But so far, I think this has been a great show. Hopefully you've listened this far. We hope you're still with us, but we're gonna just throw everything out one more time. So if you want to contact us, you can always email us at the top5albums@gmail.com.
Right, or you can also check us out on Instagram. They'll find us at Top 5 Albums.
Or if you want to, throw in your own list, feel free to be a friend with us. And,
please do.
Yeah, tell us what compilations you like. If there's one that didn't make our list that maybe will in the future, or any subjects you think that are interesting. feel free to let us know. But until next show, we will hopefully hear from you soon.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Hello, and welcome everyone to episode 4 of Top 5 Albums. If you have not been paying